Oh, that this too solid flesh should melt. My name is Jeremy Alderson. That was the end of the soliloquy. I'm the editor of the No Frack Almanac. I hope this is not too far afield, but my question is, what should we do? I do see great efforts being made in terms of public education. There are some lawsuits out there. The political process seems to be more poisoned than a frack well. I would be interested in your thinking about what can be done to stop this. Please tell me what could be done to stop this. I don't want to be disqualified on Jeopardy. That's a question.
Okay. I am often asked that in communities, and I tell people, I cannot tell you what to do because this is your community. You know what's important. You know what to do. But what I can tell you is that the only thing that is going to stop this are people. Our regulators won't. Our courts won't. Well, maybe they will, but that's going to take 10 years. And our politicians certainly won't. It's up to communities and people, and I believe this is a community and a people war. So the people, more and more people, have to speak out. Be creative and look for things that haven't been done yet. But you, as your communities, I believe, have to decide what to do. I'm sorry, I wish I could give you your answers. I believe people empower themselves if they figure out what to do. If I tell you what to do, I take that work away from your community.
Tony, your thoughts? Yeah.
Sure. Travel around New York State now and you see a lot of no fracking signs. My suggestion as to what every community in New York State should do, whether it's in the danger zone or sacrificial zone or upstate or downstate. There's a sign back there that says renewable energy now. What you should be doing is transitioning, evolving your arguments and transitioning and evolving what you're telling the politicians in New York State and the regulators, which is not just no, but yes. Say yes to energy independence. And you know what I mean by that. No one controls the energy from the sun. No one controls the energy from the wind. No one controls energy from water. It's there for the taking. So keep sending very loud, or start to send even louder messages to Albany and even locally that no, we don't want this thing called the energy of the past, another fossil fuel, another dirty fossil fuel. No, it's not clean. We don't want that. But we want energy, and what we want is the energy that we should be giving to our children today, but we'll be lucky if we work real hard to be able to give to our grandchildren 20 years from now. And that's renewable, clean, fossil fuel energy future. So my advice as to what to do is don't stop doing what you're doing, just do more. Don't just say no to shale gas. Start saying emphatically that you want to see significant activity across New York State that leads to new jobs, that leads to new income for the state, that leads to a cleaner environment, that decreases human health impacts, that decreases the effect on climate change, and is the future that we all want.
Thank you.
Yes, this was a really moving and powerful presentation, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here. You're obviously incredibly courageous and very tenacious and very smart about how you keep your information, especially when it tends to disappear or change when you're not looking. Do you feel that your neighbors and friends in Rosebud and in the province of Alberta are frightened, or do you feel supported by them? Do you feel like you're forced to be in a leadership position? Are there people who are willing to work with you? What is it like for you in your own community right now? Not just right now, but over the last decade.
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask. Over the last decade, it has been brutally painful. I've cried myself to sleep I don't know how many nights. Now it's changing. It's amazing how it's changing. There was a group put together in the fall. They are demanding moratorium. There's another group, a conservative Alberta farmers, demanding ban. There's websites popping up, more and more people speaking out. We had our first court date April 26th, and it was supposed to be 26 and 27, but it got shortened. And 20 Alberta landowners from all over the province came to sit behind me. I couldn't believe it. I had actually a really hard time sitting there. And it is building. My own community, I think it's always very difficult when it's your community. And they took the money. So what are they going to do? Do they give the money back? They can't really give the money back. I never thought I would see any Albertans rising up the way I am to the day I died. So that is the most incredible positive. And you see, Tony was witness to me telling you, I can't tell you what to do in your community. Tony, that's a fantastic idea about the renewable energy now. And I'm going to take that back to my community because I haven't thought of that. I love that. And I think more and more Albertans are starting to question their part in letting this happen. For Albertans, I think it's tough for them because they've enabled this. And when the contamination began, very few people said anything. So of course, it's going to take them a bit of time to realize, I don't know how to explain this. I was very angry at the betrayals, and a lot of losses and a lot of phenomenal pain, personal pain from some of the losses. And it was a remarkable transition to recognize the anger was putting me right where the companies, the corrupt politicians, the regulators wanted me to be. Because when we're that angry, they control us and they take away the Wonder Woman and the Superman. They take it away. And I can't tell you when I figured that out, but I did, and all of a sudden I thought, whoa, and every day that I tried to work on letting the anger go, I could feel myself becoming more and more powerful. And the Wonder Woman, that's not reality. That's an image of a ridiculous regulator. I am not Wonder Woman. I am an ordinary little Canadian citizen, and my power is your power. We have incredible power as people, our communities. What I love about the renewable energy now, these massive transmission lines, power lines, pipelines, the bitumen, that is not in our communities. By doing the renewable energy now, you can create the power in your community, you can manage it, you can own it, and keep it. So nobody controls it. And then your power just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, as well as the communities. So as terrible as my story is, it has been the most powerful, positive thing in a really horrible way, because I see people all around the world making the same transition to a new way. I don't even know what that way is yet. But I think the corporations, the big multinationals, are going down. Not just in Canada, like it's in big financial trouble. Aubrey, Chesapeake, look at these guys. The shareholders are starting to go, oh, we're pulling our money out. This doesn't look good. I think we better give them something to invest in. Show the rest of your country, New York, like you guys can do this.
I have a two-part question. First of all, do you think there would be any point in citizens demanding hearings by the EPA to discuss their underregulation of this industry? And second of all, if such a hearing would take place, would either of you be willing to testify or submit written or audio or video testimonies?
Want me to go first?
Yes and yes. Very good questions. Put the heat on. These guys know they have failed us. All the regulators. In Gaylord, Michigan, a gentleman with terminal cancer raised the question of what about crimes against humanity and a case with The Hague? And I said to him, yes, I can't do it, I don't have time, but I would make time if this hearing happens. I would come back, it would be my honor, or I would submit video or written testimony, absolutely. I would come in person to do it.
Thank you.
With respect to the first part of the question, as you all know, there are 2 ongoing EPA studies, one local to Pavilion, Wyoming, one very general, more or less entitled The Potential for Impact of Hydraulic Fracturing on Underground Sources of Drinking Water. Both of those studies have been elongated, delayed, and politically messed with, and they continue to be politically messed with, unfortunately from both sides of the political spectrum. That's very disappointing to me. So the more general EPA study on hydraulic fracturing was intended to be finished by mid-year next year, and now talking about maybe 2014. There is not enough money to do the study well, and the EPA's budget keeps getting hacked at. Would more testimony help at this point? I really don't think so. I think it's diminishing returns. The scientists and engineers working for the EPA know everything they need to know. But in my opinion, they need to be given greater freedom to do what they're supposed to do as science and engineers without too much overbearing political influence. With respect to the second question, would I testify? I can't, because I'm currently being considered as a member of the External Review Committee for the Pavilion study. I will know by the end of June whether I will be part of that review panel. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but the study has been delayed. It probably won't get seriously underway until this fall. At least that's the current plan. So it could be that I have a conflict of interest. If I'm going to be on that panel, I could not actually go before an EPA study and testify. In fact, I shouldn't even be telling you any more than I've already been told you tonight, so I'm not. I'm trying to keep a totally open mind about what's happened in Pavilion, which, if I can relate Pavilion to what you heard from Jessica tonight, is the closest example we have in the U.S. of exactly what Jessica was talking about. Drilling into and fracking into an underground source of drinking water. Literally fracking in the water table. And I think Jessica mentioned that that should be a crime, and I'm not allowed to say that here. She did.
But I didn't say it. That was a gentleman who responded to my presentation, and someone who is saying it publicly is a county councillor. Part of your question, Maura, County Councillor Patty Monroe in Alberta is publicly speaking out against fracking, and he is saying what they did in my community should be crimes against, he considers it crimes against humanity.
The industry has tremendous technical capability, as you can imagine. These are not dumb people. And they have very large resources to experiment with new technologies. And I'm convinced that the scientists and engineers in many of these coal bed methane cases are convinced, they convince themselves that they can do it safely. The risk factor is there, as Jessica pointed out, from government resources and documents in Canada. They recognize that the risk is there. The question comes down to what is acceptable risk, and when are you willing to bear the consequences when the risks don't play out?
How many of you are from Pennsylvania?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to read a very short poem from a book titled Crazy Horse in Stillness. The author is William Heyen, Heyen. And the title of the poem is Rattle. Crazy Horse rattled a gourd rattle filled with pebbles. Soon he could hear the pebbles' voices, each different but all singing the same song. Soon his own voice joined those from the rattle. Soon he rose to rattle this song among earth and stars for as long as we live, or we're lost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'm Peter Gamble. I'm from Yates County. And the question I have is, you come to us from Canada, and I really appreciate what you shared with us. And I just want to know what's motivating you to come and help people in New York and the United States?
Oh, you expect me to be able to answer that? Oh my goodness, without bawling my eyes out.
How can we help you?
Well, no, that's a very tender question. Because it's so bad what they're doing. And if I can prevent even just one family from bathing their babies in water that I bathed in for 2 years, I would travel anywhere. And it's information that is not in the mainstream media. It is information that our own industry, this is not my science. This is industry and regulator science. A woman, an industry person at Michigan in Gaylord, got very angry with me at the end. And she got up and said, that was 80% extreme embellishment, but it was 80% industry's embellishment then, and the regulators. People need to know this, because this is not the stuff you get to find. And I think this is as big as it is a possible crime against humanity. It is what I believe is going to change humanity and make us better. And how could I say no to such wonderful people? And I love New York State. I hiked here when I was a teenager in the Adirondacks. So anywhere I would go.
And I should point out that Jessica has gone just about everywhere.
Well, not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Including such charming places as Ireland.
Ireland, yes. I couldn't believe it. And I had just presented in Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan, and then I got a phone call. Would you go to Ireland to talk about fracking? And within 2 weeks there I was. It was a whirlwind tour, and it was incredible. They do want to frack the world.
Yeah. But in Ireland, they're going to frack entirely without chemicals.
And they're going to perforate the steel casing with water.
Yeah.
Hello to both of you, and thank you so much for coming down.
You're very
Jessica.
welcome. It's my honor.
And Tony, it's been 2 or 3 times I've heard you speak. And
Yeah, he's a bore, right? Time to get a new face.
Well, it's great to see the two of you up there. My name is Peter Gordon, and I teach earth science to 9th graders in the area, near neighboring town, Horseheads. And I live in Corning, the Corning area myself. And my question is, what suggestions might you have for someone like myself to do what I try to do, is present both sides to various issues regarding things with our environment, with the earth. And this is such a sensitive topic. I'm here because I'm on the anti-fracking side of it, but I do try to present everything as neutral as I can to students. 9th graders are about 14 years old, let's say, give or take. And I guess I'm wondering, where can I have them go? And where can I go sometimes to find more accurate information? If I have them just do research on their own, say the internet, they go to all different sites and say, Mr. Gordon, this is right, or this is wrong, or is this true, is this not true? So I have a hard time directing them where to go. So do you have some suggestions for teachers like myself who are trying to reach young kids and helping them realize what's going on?
So that's for me? Both?
Both, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tony's looking at me.
Well, you first all the time.
Okay. Let's see. Bring them here. Bring them to an event like this. Mm-hmm. The first event in Michigan at Traverse City, I was stunned how many teenagers were there. And a teacher came with her ecology class. Those kids were phenomenal. It was really interesting. They came and talked to me after. I presented at the University of Alberta, and I was stunned. For the first time, half the audience were young men, and many of them were reservoir engineers. How to find the information you can trust? I think what you need to teach the kids, the best thing I can think of is how to think critically, so that because they need to, I've been fooled too. Let them go where they need to go, but perhaps teach them that you're going to have to wade your way through the internet the rest of their lives. They have to come to learn how to discern the lies from the truth. They can learn how to do that. That's what a good investigative reporter will do. Look at what the New York Times has been doing. They've figured that out. I don't know. The propaganda is very big. It is very big. Perhaps suggest to the students that they go interview communities that haven't been fracked, that are being fracked, that have been fracked. They can interview me by email. They could interview Pennsylvania people, Wyoming. They could go to their communities here that have not yet been fracked, that are about to become sacrifice zones. And then they may learn how to start getting that, I don't know, what's that, the critical edge to discern truth. We know when it's truth. And the more you seek it out, the more you find it. And the quicker you hear the lies. And the sooner your students can figure that out for themselves rather than be told how to do it. I know I'm always pawning it off on making you guys do your own work. Have the kids learn how to do it. One of the saddest things I've seen in America and in Canada is the total decimation of our education. They do not teach critical thinking anymore. Yeah, and we can help. I have, just before I came, and I haven't been able to respond yet, an 11-year-old in Ireland emailed me asking if I would be part of his school project on fracking. Now that's an 11-year-old choosing that. I met him for breakfast one morning. That's amazing. So he's going to figure his own way through, and I think it is our responsibility. I don't have children, but I think it's a very important responsibility to help the kids learn how to think for themselves and to question authority. Who wants to listen to the authority? Like I can't ever go call for help to my Canadian police now.
Educator to educator, teacher to teacher, a suggestion, a pedagogical suggestion on how, following up on what Jessica just said, how to get 9 to 14-year-olds to learn how to learn. And it's no surprise to anybody in this room that that age group and even older don't learn the traditional ways that we did. You can't tell them to go read a book, but you can tell them to use social media to learn something. And of course, it has to be quick. It has to be in small bites. But that doesn't mean it's inaccurate. And it doesn't mean that the students are going to buy just anything that they read. And the challenge is to have them do some research. It's going to be web-based. You can't tell them to go read a book or a big scientific article. They won't. But you can tell them to go to certain websites, which we can direct you to, where we think there's really good, high quality, vetted information. And then ask them to parse it and share it by social media.
Ooh.
And that starts what you've seen happen many, many times. Things go viral. When things strike students and they're drawn into it to be interactive, if they're challenged to think, if they're challenged to answer the question, what would you do in your community if this was going to happen? They talk to their friends, and they talk to their friends, and because everybody's interconnected, pretty soon that becomes a network of information sharing. That's, even with the 20-year-olds that I teach at Cornell, that's getting to be more and more the way that the communication and the education and the pedagogy of education is happening. Tuning in to the fact that they're infinitely more capable than people my age of absorbing multiple inputs from multiple formats and still being able to think it through is pretty amazing. Play to their strengths and their interests.
Well, I appreciate you offering the websites. And the critical thinking is the tough one.
Yeah.
That these kids need to learn.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
First question you ask them when they read something is, ask who paid for the science they just read.
I'd like to thank you very much for coming here tonight. You are truly an inspiration. And in case you haven't noticed, the energy level in this theater has risen considerably. Thank you. And you've inspired us all to continue to do battle, and I feel this is a battle. And everything that we have here is worth fighting for. There's strength in numbers, and the presentation and all of this information in the back is incredible. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Charlie Tarr, traveled from Buffalo. Jess, wow. if I could ask two questions, I'd appreciate it. Yeah. I want to know what effort you've made or what success you've had reaching eastward into Ontario to get your story out. My specialty in this movement is connecting large dots, connecting substantial issues. Victor Fletcher at the Toronto Street News is a dear friend. I have CBC connectivity. I've had history with Greenpeace in Canada and Athabasca since 2004. I just learned of you through Chip Northrup and Larissa Driska, and I'm curious what I can do and what we can do to bring your story eastward, where I know there are receptive ears for it.
Ontario has asked me to tour on fracking in the fall. They had actually asked me to come in the winter, and then the Ireland happened, and the Ontario coordinator and I decided Ireland was probably more important because they have pretty pristine water and agricultural products still just now. So I'm hoping to get into Ontario in the fall. Athabasca has invited me up for a fracking conference. The Fort Nelson First Nations up to northeast British Columbia, because they're not being listened to, and that's their land that's being fracked. I would like to possibly exchange information, and maybe we can be in touch. I thank you very much. I agree with getting it eastward. You know they plan to frack Ontario. Yeah, and they also plan to frack a strip up Ottawa. So I can't wait for Halliburton and Schlumberger to sit in Prime Minister Harper's yard and frack his house.
And Tony, if I could ask you, working on Leroy, New York, where it's Dr. Trifoletti is the pediatrician who has now identified the Leroy syndrome as a unique blood-brain etiology affecting those young women. I wanted to ask, Roger and I have discussed this, your comfort level across the last 20 years of vertical hydrofracture in working with Ron Bishop. I was alarmed to learn the chemistry that we found in the ground in Leroy. The 7 wells surrounding the school, as I said, include 2 of the worst biocides known on the planet. We also have all the heavy-hitting endocrine disruption chemistry, 2BE. The flowback pits through the 80s and 90s were all open flowback. They were on the athletic field of the school. The liners have been buried 3 feet under, immediately adjacent to the school for all 7 wells. I mentioned to you a minute ago that 2 of these wells received variants to be compressed for distance from each other when 3 were producing, and cumulatively none of this gas is being tested.
And the question is?
I'm sorry, the question is, what is your comfort level with the chemistry that's been driven into the ground in the last 20 years? The vertical process that we continually hear is so commonplace. Do you believe that there's a reason in this moment to be significantly questioning that the last 20 years of vertical hydrofracture?
My story, most of those red dots are vertical. They're vertically drilled wells, and there's no horizontal leg to them. We do have a bunch of deviated, they're also doing 45-degree angle drilling, which apparently is pretty bad for gas migration and fracking on an angle. The 2 new wells in Canada wants to do will be directional. It's like they're just surrounding my water well. We think they want to screw all the data, but a Michigan industry man said to me, oh, no, all the 8,000 wells in Michigan are vertical. Everything's safe. There's never been a contamination case. And I said to him, yeah, in Alberta, industry, the regulators, they all say there's never been a contamination case in Alberta from fracking, even though they know my story. The vertical fracking is a new fracking, just like the horizontals. I believe they're all as bad. And even the ones when they frack just with pure nitrogen, as pure as the air we breathe, they are not telling us what they're drilling with. They're not telling us the chemicals before they frack, after they frack, and when they service. And they're not telling us what they're bringing up from underground. The Leroy case is an incredible case. I'd love to see some of that data. But these records that I'm supposed to be receiving, I'm hoping will lead more into the trail of some of the chemicals. And believe you me, I will let the world know whatever I find out. I'll share it all. But I don't think it's safe as they say it is. One of a colleague of mine that just recently died suddenly, he's the man who taught me how to read the perforation and fracture data. I miss him tremendously. It's still a shock to his family and myself. But he told me the shallow hydraulic fracturing on the vertical wells, he basically said, when they frack down deep, you can get the more vertical connections. But when they do the shallow with less overburdened pressure, the fracks will go out further horizontal, and then he said, like flying, they'll cup up. And that's when you get the groundwater contamination. So how safe is that? And when they're fracking and perforating at 100 meters below the surface, that is evil and that is insane. And that's on vertical wells. And when they do it in secret and lie about it, that's not safe. If it is safe, they would disclose what they're doing.
Your question?
The only thing I want to add to that is that there's a very, very large difference in scale between unconventional gas development and shale, which has never happened in New York, and all the 44,000 plus gas and oil wells that have been drilled in New York since the 1820s. Very simple data point. The first 1,000 shale gas wells, if they are permitted and drilled and fracked in New York, the first 1,000 will consume more frack fluid than all the oil and gas wells that have ever been drilled and fracked in the history of New York State. That's the difference in scale. And the first 1,000 will produce more waste than all the 44,000 existing oil and gas wells that have already been drilled and fracked in New York State. So, yeah, I'm concerned about all of them. I'm very concerned about the ones that aren't here yet.
The report that I talked about with the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, these are all our politicians that are ministers of environment across the country. The real threat that they concluded from industry to our water was not from conventional oil and gas. They were talking unconventional oil and gas. The shales, the gas, the deep, the shallow, the vertical, the horizontal, what hasn't even come yet. They didn't know in 2002 about the super fracking.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. That's the big difference is this, we have wasted the good stuff, the conventional stuff. And this unconventional stuff we have to look at, are we willing to change, use less, waste less, get into the alternates and the renewables, and do we have the courage to change? Because we cannot continue the way we are.
Thank you again for coming. And I understand your water is contaminated, yet you continue to stay there. And I'm going to fight this fight for every last breath that I have in New York State. But if they do lift the moratorium, they start issuing permits, what is your recommendation? The mayor of Dish, Texas wrote an article and said, run as fast as you can. I don't want to be a sacrificial lamb. I don't want to be a casualty of war. What is your recommendation if they do start drilling in New York State for people that live in areas that are going to be fracked right away?
It's very important. Thank you for that. Excellent, excellent question. I don't know why it's me doing this case. I'm a very private person. I'm very shy. This is really hard for me to do. I love my little dog. I love birds and trees and being alone and quiet, and I love meditation and living in meditative contemplation. This is not a life I choose. But for some reason, I have the degrees, the career. I chose to live, or something chose me to live there, to where Encana did the most terrible things. Not all of us are like me. I don't have children, I don't have a partner, so I don't have others that I love that I can put at risk. Most people have families. Some people need to run. Some people need to stay and fight. My water is no longer connected to the home, but I have had gas migrating, I think, to surface, because I'm getting dead zones in vegetation, not near where the well is. Yes, I'm afraid of the gas migrating into the home. Yes, I'm afraid of many things. But I believe in my case, I have to stay and fight. You and only you can decide whether to stay and fight or run. There's nothing wrong with running. If you run and you want to fight as hard as you can, you run and find somewhere else, make your battle station and fight from there. But where are you going to run to? Vermont. We're all going to go move to Vermont. Yay, Vermont. Or we're going to move to Ireland, because I think they're going to do well. Germany wants to ban fracking now. They've had so much contamination. Bulgaria, I don't know. But you have to think about that too. I want to run every single day. And when the need to run overtakes me, embarrassingly, I have terrible internet, but I go to the multiple listings, you know, the real estate, all over the world, like, oh, I could live there, and I could live there, and I could go to Greece because their economy's trashed, and I could live on the ocean and just have a great life. But they would probably come frack me. Yeah. Right? So sometimes, I think this fight, we have to stay and fight it, because we're more powerful when we stay home.
My question is to Jessica. Is it as bad in Alberta as it is here in the attempt to really brainwash young people? I don't know if you're seeing it there, and you talked about having students weigh evidence and so forth, and I taught college students for 30 years. I believe the same thing. However, in this case, I feel a need to be more aggressive in presenting this side. I'll tell you why. In this advisory committee, our county has, whose meetings, of course, are closed to the public, but if you read their minutes, they're a little disappointed they haven't gotten as far as they'd like to with going into middle schools to tell students about careers in gas drilling. These are 11 and 12-year-olds. Why not just teach them to repair typewriters? I mean, this is an old industry. But anyway, and then I went to a program in Vestal. The Landowners Coalition was proud to brag that they had taken 100 AP high school students and helped them do research projects, okay, on gas. Colleges and universities, our community colleges and so forth, are developing gas 101 and gas drilling programs. Is it as blatant as that where you are?
Oh, yeah. We have something called insider education. And if you go to their website, oh, I can't believe it. They have this photo of all these teachers that went to tour Encana's frack fields. And they're standing there and they're all going like this, like the Heil Hitler thing. No, I'm serious. You look at the first time I looked at that picture, I went, don't those teachers know what they're doing? Encana has this cupcake video where they're propagandizing little children with chocolate cupcakes and icing this high into a frack sculpture. I used it as a title for the presentation when I first met Tony, and they fracked, I said, Encana fracked the blue icing, because they fracked the water. But they did that to get the little children to see how safe and tantalizing and delicious fracking is. Really little kids. It's horrifying. It's very blatant. They go into the schools. When I went public, one of our NGOs went around to the schools with Encana. It's not just the companies. The NGOs are in on it. Non-government organizations, and they were telling the students, young students, how Encana is protecting our water. It was disgusting. I saved the ad, and I made a comment to some people in British Columbia about this, and a woman in that same organization wrote back saying, it can't be true. I work for that organization. No, it's not true. And I said, okay, so I pulled out the ad and sent it to her. And there's been silence ever since. It's very bad. It's very scary. But again, the kids are going to have to find their own way. One story that's really positive. When I began speaking out, most of the people were almost abusive to me. And one afternoon, I dropped in on a neighbor for some reason, and there were 4 women talking. And they asked me, or there were 3 women, I was the 4th. So the other 3 women, one of them was getting some leases on her land. And she said, Jessica, you know, Encana came to sign a little new lease, and they promised us we don't have to worry about our water because they're using green frack fluids. Perfectly green. So she said to me, do you believe that? And I think everybody knows, and we need to stop worrying about the others. If we begin to believe what we need to believe and see the truth as it is, others will too. So I said to her, what do you think? And the women started cackling and giggling. They all got it. They all knew. Impossible. How can you trust Encana? They've proven themselves to be unreliable. And kids, there are ways of helping the kids counter the propaganda. Yes, propaganda is very powerful. This industry has a lot of money, but the kids do know. And to get aggressive with them, I'm not a teacher, but I let them come to me, the kids. And when they come with a direct question, I'll show them a piece of evidence or a slide or a photograph or a quote by someone or some data that they can take that's simple. And I say, you go figure your question out. I think it's better for you. You can email me, phone me anytime if you want to argue this and ask for direction. But I think it's better to let them figure it out and come out of the propaganda. But that's just my view. But it's blatant in Alberta. It's very bad.
We're going to close with this one, I promise.
It's not a question. I'd just like to say that some people have asked where they might find more information. And Shale Shock Media, these 2 guys right here who are videotaping this, have videotaped numerous talks and presentations by experts in various aspects of fracking. So all students should go look at shaleshockmedia.org. And thanks to them because they provide an invaluable service. And thanks to Bill and Chris.
And great thanks to Jessica and Tony. Thank you so very much for being here tonight.